I pulled up to Mom's house in my beat-up 2008 Toyota Corolla, parked behind a shiny BMW SUV, and immediately regretted everything. The whole driveway was packed with expensive cars. Teslas, Mercedes, even a convertible Mustang that probably hadn't touched a highway in months. My Corolla made a soft rattling noise when I turned off the engine. Great. I sat there for a second, gripping the wheel, wondering if I could just reverse and pretend I'd gone to the wrong house. But I took a breath, grabbed the lemon cake I promised Mom, and got out. Savannah spotted me before I even made it to the porch. She was already holding her phone at the perfect angle, filming herself in selfie mode while wearing a peach-pink dress that probably cost more than my car insurance for the year. She whipped around, caught sight of me, and her face lit up not in a happy way, more like a lion seeing dinner. "Oh my God," she shrieked, laughing. "You actually drove that thing here?" The camera was still rolling. Of course it was. "I thought Morgan worked for the military," she said, loud enough for everyone on the lawn to hear. "What is this? Your basic training starter pack. I didn't know the Air Force issued junkyard cars." Laughter rippled across the crowd. I didn't say anything, just smiled and walked past her with the cake in both hands. I wasn't going to drop to her level, especially not in front of Mom, especially not today. But inside, something twisted. Not because of the car. I liked my Corolla. It was reliable, paid off, and honestly safer than half the junk these social climbers leased. No. What stung was how familiar the whole scene felt. Savannah always had a spotlight, even when she didn't deserve it, and I'd always been the quiet one, the serious sister. The one people forgot to introduce. The one they assumed still lived in a dorm or shared an apartment with 4 other people. They never saw what I actually did. They never asked, and I never offered. The party was already in full swing. Balloons, champagne, some kind of grazing table that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I placed the cake next to a tower of macarons and looked around for Mom. She was across the patio, chatting with some neighbors. She smiled when she saw me, gave me a quick hug and whispered, "You look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" I shrugged. Deployment fatigue. And Savannah popped up behind me like a shadow. "I'm going live in 5. You gonna stay for the background, or are you heading back to base in that war relic?" She gestured toward my car with a dramatic flick of her wrist. Her followers ate it up. She had over 1 million on TikTok and treated every family event like a red carpet. "I'm staying," I said simply. She rolled her eyes. "Just don't park that thing where it ruins the group shots." I didn't respond. I just turned and walked toward the drink table, poured myself a ginger ale, and sipped it slow. I could feel her watching me, trying to get a rise, like she always had. But I wasn't going to give her that. Not today. Not anymore. That car, my so-called war relic, had been with me for over a decade, through 3 bases, 2 overseas assignments, and more 18-hour shifts than I could count. I had driven it through blizzards, sandstorms, and North Dakota in February. It didn't have leather seats or a flashy sound system, but the glove compartment held a ribbon from my first successful command simulation, and under the driver's seat was the coin I got after leading a joint force briefing that made national coverage. No one at this party would understand that, and that was okay. The truth was, I hadn't seen most of these people in years. Some I barely remembered. Savannah had turned Mom's birthday into a pseudo-influencer meetup, complete with a sponsored backdrop and someone filming with a gimbal. At one point, I heard her say to a guest, "Don't tag my sister in anything. She's camera-shy military or something." Or something was doing a lot of work in that sentence. The thing with Savannah was, she wasn't dumb. She played dumb. Big difference. She knew enough to jab where it hurt, but never enough to understand what those jabs meant. She assumed I stayed quiet because I was embarrassed. In truth, I stayed quiet because the things I did couldn't be talked about at cocktail tables and live streams. Not without clearance. Not without consequences. But even if I could have explained it, I wouldn't have. Explaining would have meant justifying, and I didn't owe her that. Later, while everyone gathered for speeches and toasts, I stood near the edge of the patio and sipped my second ginger ale. I caught snippets of conversations, real estate, Botox, crypto, influencers griping about brand deals. No one mentioned service. No one talked about sacrifice. And definitely no one noticed the small emblem on my license plate. The one that said, USAF 05, the one you had to earn. That was fine. Let them laugh. Let her laugh. She wouldn't be laughing for long. I walked away from the noise and leaned against the fence at the back of the yard. There was a bit of shade there, just enough to feel like I wasn't completely choking on fake laughs and old perfume. A couple of kids ran past me screaming about cake, but I didn't flinch. I was used to tuning things out. Years of training. What I wasn't used to, what I never really got used to, was how deep Savannah's contempt ran. It wasn't just the car. It never was. It was everything. Always had been. When we were kids, people said we looked nothing alike. She had golden hair and perfect teeth by age 11. I had dark eyes, too many freckles, and bruises on my shins from climbing trees I wasn't supposed to. She was graceful, always rehearsed for the camera, whether it was Dad's camcorder or a school play. I didn't know how to pose. Still don't. I remember one Christmas she got a karaoke machine and sang the same Britney Spears song for hours. I got a pocket knife and a set of books on survival skills. Dad knew what he was doing. But it really started getting ugly when high school came around. She was prom queen. I joined junior ROTC. She dated athletes. I stayed late at the range working on breathing techniques. She got her first 1,000 followers on Instagram before the app was even cool. I got my first letter from the Air Force Academy and didn't tell anyone. I still remember the day I found out I got in. I came home from school, soaked from rain, and opened the envelope on the kitchen counter like it was just another electric bill. My hands shook. I wanted to scream, but I stayed quiet. That was my thing. Later that night, I told Mom. She was proud, in her own quiet way. But Savannah was there too, painting her nails with one hand and scrolling her phone with the other. She barely looked up. Cool, she said. So, like, you're gonna crawl in the mud and salute people? Sounds gross. Hell. 2 days later, I found out she accidentally tossed the acceptance packet into the recycling bin when she cleaned the kitchen. No one believed me. Not Mom. Not even Dad. They said it was a misunderstanding. Savannah cried on cue and said she thought it was junk mail. I didn't push it. I just ordered another copy and kept it in my backpack. That's when I realized she'd never be happy for me. Only happy when I was smaller than her. I left for the academy that summer without a big goodbye. No party. No send-off post. I packed my own bags and left before sunrise. Savannah didn't even wake up. At the academy, I thrived. Not because it was easy, but because it was clear. Rules made sense. Effort meant results. You weren't judged on your lipstick shade or your follower count. You were judged on whether you showed up, whether you followed orders, and whether you stood by the person next to you when things got loud. I liked that. A lot. Meanwhile, Savannah was building her brand. Fashion, lifestyle, whatever the algorithm liked that month. She did what she was good at, selling a version of herself that people clicked on. She was smart about it too, I'll give her that. She had timing, a sense of trends, and enough drama to keep engagement high. But deep down, I always knew she hated that I never asked her for help. She expected me to be the one begging for shout-outs, desperate to be seen. I wasn't. We talked maybe once a year, usually around the holidays. And even then, it felt like walking into a room already half on fire. She'd ask where I was stationed, but only so she could look confused when I explained it. She'd wrinkle her nose and go, "So, like, do you shoot people?" Like it was a joke. I stopped answering questions like that after year 3. What she never understood, what none of them understood, was that I didn't want the spotlight. Not then, not now. I didn't need recognition to feel like I mattered. I had purpose. I had command. I was good at what I did. And none of that required Savannah's approval. Still, the thing about old wounds is that they don't always stay closed just because you've moved on. They wait. And then one day you show up to a family party in a car she thinks isn't good enough, and suddenly all those buried moments claw their way back like they were never gone. I could hear her laughing again from across the yard. Fake, polished, perfectly staged for her phone. 1,000 people might see that story before midnight. Maybe 10,000. I didn't care. I wasn't in that video for her audience. I was in it for her. Because one of us had changed. And it wasn't her. I turned back toward the patio when I heard Mom tapping her glass. She always did this soft little ding-ding-ding thing when she was about to make a toast. Even when no one was paying attention, she did it like the effort itself mattered. She smiled, waved to the crowd, and thanked everyone for coming. It was her 65th birthday, and she wanted to keep things small and simple, which apparently meant 40 guests, catering, and a decorative ice sculpture shaped like a hummingbird. I stood near the back, next to a planter full of rosemary, quietly watching. Savannah wasn't watching. She was busy posing by the balloon wall with a ring light and a friend who looked like she'd wandered in from a reality show audition. They took turns flipping their hair and sticking out one leg like flamingos on a catwalk. The captions practically wrote themselves. Then Savannah spotted me again. This time, she didn't laugh. She smirked, like she'd just remembered something and was too amused not to share it. She picked up her phone, switched to front-facing camera, and hit Go Live. "Hey, besties," she chirped. "Okay, so I have to show you something hilarious." "What?" She spun around, camera in hand, and aimed it toward the driveway. "See that sad little car over there?" she said, zooming in with theatrical horror. "That's my sister's." "No, seriously. That's what she drove here. Isn't she like military or something? I thought soldiers got discounts." People online were already commenting. I caught a glimpse over her shoulder. "Is she poor? Wait, is that a Corolla?" "Ong, stop." Then she panned the camera back to herself and whispered dramatically, "Y'all, I swear I thought it was a rideshare. Like, someone's grandma coming to pick up plates." That did it. The group near her lost it. One guy actually pointed at the car like it was a clown at a kid's party. I just stood there, letting my soda go flat in my hand. Mom looked over, confused. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Just Savannah being Savannah." "I wish she wouldn't use that thing at family events," Mom mumbled. I did too. But I knew better than to expect change. Savannah kept going. "Honestly," she said, "I think she's doing like cosplay. Maybe it's part of some undercover mission, Operation Basic Transportation." Someone else nearby asked if she'd called an Uber to take me home. That one actually stung. It was one thing for Savannah to act like an idiot online, but when the others joined in, people who barely knew me, people who had smiled and hugged me an hour ago, it felt like stepping barefoot into a pile of broken glass. Quiet, sudden, personal. Still, I didn't react. Not a twitch. Years of training made that easier than it should have been. Then, for reasons I'll never understand, Savannah walked over to me with the camera still rolling. "Oh, look who's here," she announced. "The legend herself. Morgan, say hi to the stream." He blinked. "No thanks." "Oh, come on, don't be shy. Tell them about your car." I looked her dead in the eye. "It has excellent gas mileage." Savannah cackled. "See? She's hilarious." She turned back to the camera. "You guys, she's like this all the time. Stoic. Mysterious. She probably has secrets buried under that car." "Just one," I said. She paused, thrown off. "Wait, what?" "Just one secret," I repeated. "And it's not buried, it's mounted on the back." She looked confused for a second, then shook it off and pivoted to another joke. "I swear she's speaking in Morse code again. This is what happens when your sister lives in a bunker." A few people laughed politely, but I noticed a shift in the crowd. One guy older, maybe ex-military, glanced toward the driveway and narrowed his eyes at my car. Something clicked for him. His expression changed. He nudged the woman next to him and whispered something. I caught a glimpse of Savannah's screen. The viewer count had jumped past 3,000. "You done?" I asked her. She blinked. "What?" "With your show." She glanced at the phone, laughed awkwardly, and ended the stream. "Whatever, I was just playing." I turned and walked back toward the side of the house. Not fast, not angry. Just done. The same way you close a file you've already reviewed. There was nothing left to see. Behind me, I heard her mutter, "She's always been dramatic." That. Funny, coming from a woman who just live-streamed an entire character assassination over a car. By the time I got to the front gate, I could already hear the comments echoing in my mind. They weren't new, just louder now. Why doesn't she dress up? Is she even really military? Bet she lives in a studio apartment. And somewhere in there, the worst one. She just doesn't belong. Maybe that's what got to me. Not the jokes, not the stares, but the reminder that I'd spent a decade of my life earning respect in rooms full of men twice my age and 3 times my ego only to come home and be reduced to the kind of car I drove. So I stopped for a second, turned, and looked back at that car. Faded paint, slight dent near the bumper. But on the back, clean and centered, was the one detail no one had mentioned yet. The license plate. It wasn't just a number. It was a designation, a recognition, a fact. But facts only matter to people who bother to look. I didn't plan to make a statement. I never do. But as I walked past the front row of parked cars toward the trash bins, carrying an empty cake box, I noticed Savannah standing near the driveway with two of her friends. They weren't talking, they were staring. At my car, at the back of it, specifically, one of the girls leaned in, squinted, and whispered something. Savannah tilted her head like she wasn't sure what she was looking at. Then she stepped forward, heels clicking against the concrete like she was approaching something alive. She bent down a little, close enough to read the print on the lower right corner of the plate. There it was. USA Fee. Active duty. 05. Savannah blinked. I could see the shift happen right there, behind her eyes. Confusion first, then something colder. She tilted her phone upward, pulled it back to take a picture, then hesitated. You could tell she didn't want to look stupid, but also didn't want to admit she didn't know what she was looking at. One of the girls asked, "Wait, what's 05? Savannah answered too fast. "I think it's like a parking pass or something." The other girl shook her head. "No, I've seen that on base decals. My uncle had one. He was like high up in the Navy." Savannah's mouth twitched. "Maybe she borrowed it," she said. Then her friend pointed to the small sticker on the plate. "That's an official NORAD designation." "What's NORAD?" "It's a big deal," the girl muttered. "Like missile defense and stuff." That's when Savannah's smile started to wobble. For the first time all day, she wasn't smirking. She was calculating. She pulled out her phone again. Not for a photo this time. She started typing. Fast. Probably into Google. I kept walking like I didn't see any of it. Like I hadn't heard the way her voice changed when the acronym hit her ears. But inside, something subtle cracked loose. Not satisfaction, not victory. Just weight, finally shifting to the other side of the scale. A minute later, Savannah came hurrying up to me near the side door. Her tone was flat, too casual. "Hey," she said, "that your car out there?" I nodded. She tucked her phone into her bag like it was suddenly radioactive. "Cool. I didn't know you still had it. I keep what works." "Ha." She opened her mouth like she was going to ask something else, then stopped. Her eyes moved back toward the driveway. Her brain hadn't caught up to her pride yet. "It's got a weird plate," she said, testing the waters. "Is that for something specific?" I didn't answer right away. I let her sit in that discomfort for a second. Then I said, "It's standard issue for certain positions." Her expression stayed blank, but the corners of her lips twitched. "Like a staff thing?" "No," I said. "Like a command thing." She looked at me like she wanted to say something snide. But the moment had passed. The stage wasn't hers anymore. The spotlight had shifted without warning, and she didn't know how to handle the dark. After she walked off, I noticed her friends weren't laughing anymore. One of them was actually typing into her phone, probably fact-checking everything Savannah had just pretended to understand. That was the thing about this type of exposure when it lands. It doesn't explode. It erodes. Later that afternoon, while people started packing up gift bags and folding up chairs, Savannah barely said a word. Her energy was off. She wasn't live streaming. She wasn't hovering by the photo wall. She kept glancing over at my car like it had personally insulted her. One uncle came over, leaned in, and asked, "So, you're really at NORAD?" I nodded. "Lieutenant Colonel." He gave a low whistle. "Savannah didn't mention that. She rarely does." He grinned. "Well, thank you for your service, and for keeping an eye on the sky." It was such a simple sentence, but it carried weight, something real. I wasn't used to getting that kind of recognition at home, especially not in front of Savannah. When I turned back toward the house, I caught her looking at me from the porch. Not smiling, not frowning, just watching, like she was trying to do the math, and didn't like where it was going. That plate had said more in 3 letters than I ever could in 300 words. She didn't come near me the rest of the evening. Not even when Mom cut the cake or when the DJ played Savannah's favorite throwback song that usually had her lip syncing like a Broadway understudy. She wasn't dancing. She wasn't filming. She was sitting alone at one of the cocktail tables, hunched slightly, scrolling through her phone with that blank influencer face she made when she didn't want people to know she was panicking. From where I stood, I could see her screen light flickering off her sunglasses. She wasn't texting. She was researching. At one point, she turned to the guy next to her, some real estate agent she was flirting with earlier, and whispered something. He glanced at her screen and raised his eyebrows. Then he looked at me. That look lasted maybe a second longer than it needed to. A second long enough to confirm he now knew. She pulled the phone closer after that. I didn't care what she found. It was all public anyway, just buried under acronyms and websites she'd never clicked on before. If she was curious enough, she'd find my name on the official DoD roster. She'd find that 05 means Lieutenant Colonel. She'd find NORAD isn't just some random base, but a cornerstone of North American defense. She'd learn that not every uniform is a background extra. Some of us actually direct the scene. By the time dessert plates were cleared, Savannah had stopped talking completely. Not to me, not to her friends, not even to her phone. A few people noticed. Her silence stood out more than any of her noise ever had. I passed her once on the way to refill my drink. She didn't look up. I saw her thumb hovering over the search bar on Safari, mid-type. USAF female LT Cole salary. I almost laughed. Not at the money part, at the desperation behind it. She couldn't just ask me what I did or who I was. She needed to know if it looked impressive, if it sounded big enough, if it could be posted. She needed to figure out if I'd passed her and how far ahead I was. Someone called her name from across the yard. She waved without turning. That was the thing about Savannah, she never wanted people to see her vulnerable. She preferred to humiliate others before they had a chance to ask her anything real. And now, faced with something she didn't control, she shut down. After the party wrapped up, I helped Mom clean up the kitchen. She gave me a side glance and said, "Your sister's been quiet." I didn't say anything. She's not usually quiet. I handed her a dish towel. "She's figuring something out," I finally said. "Let her. This ex." Mom didn't press. She never did. But I could tell she was curious. Not enough to ask, but enough to notice. Outside, I heard the sound of heels on concrete. Savannah was pacing near the driveway again, her voice low, serious, probably on a call. I stepped outside to toss a bag of trash and caught a single line. "Yeah, she's 05. I didn't know that was a real thing either." A pause. "No, it's not just a desk job. It's command, like actual command." I didn't linger. Let her process. Let her finally, for once, shut up and listen, even if it was only to Google. And if she kept going, maybe she'd find the interviews I'd done with Defense Press. Maybe she'd see my name on a few joint task force briefings. Maybe she'd finally get it through her head that my card didn't define anything, except my choice not to flaunt what she had no idea how to earn. Recognition isn't always loud. Sometimes it just quietly sits on a license plate until someone's forced to look. The Monday after the party, I was back on base before sunrise, walking across the flight line with a clipboard in one hand and a double-shot black coffee in the other. My uniform was crisp. My hair was tight. My boots made that satisfying, steady rhythm on the pavement that told everyone around me, I'm in control, I'm focused, and I've done this more times than I can count. No one cared what car I drove here in. By 0700, I was in the operations center. I scanned the overnight logs, reviewed the regional airspace anomalies, and took a quick call from command about an upcoming simulation. We had a multinational drill scheduled for Thursday involving both Canadian and U.S. response teams, and I was coordinating the NORAD air intercept segment. It was complex, high stakes, and needed precise timing, which meant I was exactly where I was supposed to be. In my world, people didn't talk over you. They reported to you. They asked questions and actually listened to your answers. No one cared about Instagram metrics or whether your blouse matched your contour. They cared about readiness, execution, and whether the sky stayed safe on your watch. I didn't have to perform out here. I just had to deliver. And I did. Every damn day. At 0930, I stepped into a situation room briefing. 4 flags stood in the corner. A live satellite feed ran across the monitors. My deputy, Captain Reyes, handed me a folder. "Your review notes on last week's Arctic scramble," he said. "Also, Heads Up Media requested a quote from you about the upcoming exercise." I sighed. They always ask for sound bites. Reyes smirked. Well, ma'am, you are the highest-ranking female in this sector. They think it's inspiring. I shrugged. They didn't ask about inspiration when we diverted that drone from restricted airspace last month. He raised an eyebrow. Maybe they should have. End quote. When the briefing started, I took the lead. Reviewed protocols. Cross-checked alert response timelines. Delegated roles. Every person in that room had more ribbons and stripes than the average parade, and yet when I spoke, they listened. Not because I shouted, but because I had the weight of knowing what the hell I was doing. And that's the part Savannah would never get. She thought power looked like loud rooms and camera flashes. But real authority? It's quiet. It walks in, says one thing, and people move. Around lunchtime, I checked my phone. One missed call. From Mom. I stepped out onto the balcony and dialed back. She picked up right away. Hey, honey, she said. Just wanted to thank you again for coming Saturday. It meant a lot. Of course, I said. Happy birthday again. There was a pause. Then, carefully, Savannah's been a little off. She keeps asking questions about your job. Let her. She said she looked you up. Birdie. I leaned against the railing. Did she learn anything useful? She said you're important. I laughed once, dry. She finally figured that out? I think it surprised her. It surprises a lot of people, I said. They assume if you're not shouting, you must not have anything to say. Another pause. Then Mom said, I'm proud of you. I closed my eyes for a second. Let the wind cut across the concrete. Thanks, Mom. After I hung up, I went back inside and knocked out 3 hours of logistics work without blinking. My inbox was overflowing with encrypted requests, updated intel briefs, and air route modifications. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't shiny, but it was mine, and I'd earned every piece of it. At 1,530, I walked past the security checkpoint to head back toward my office. The guard at the desk stood up as I passed. Afternoon, Colonel Hale. I nodded. Sergeant. New questions about my car. No raised eyebrows, just respect, the kind that's built, not bought. That evening, when I pulled out of base and merged onto the freeway, the sky was that dull gray-pink Colorado always gives you before a cold night. My Corolla hummed beneath me, steady and familiar. I passed a billboard advertising luxury condos and another one pushing some startup's miracle weight loss app. The world outside still ran on looks and shortcuts. But not where I came from. Not where I belonged. And while Savannah was out there counting views, I was counting aircraft. She had her version of influence. I had airspace clearance. Later that week, I sat in front of a small camera crew at the Pentagon's media room. Nothing flashy, just a recorded interview for a leadership series the Department of Defense had been pushing out across internal networks. The setup was basic. Black backdrop, one camera, soft lights, and a clipboard full of questions that some PR specialist had emailed the day before. The producer, a civilian with a clipboard and a tired ponytail, looked up at me. We're just going to ask a few questions about leadership, mentorship, and your experience as a senior female officer in the Air Force. Nothing political. I nodded. Let's do it. They did the countdown and hit record. Colonel Hale, the interviewer began. You've commanded joint exercises, led response teams across multiple operations, and now you're coordinating with NORAD. But you've kept a pretty low profile for someone with that much responsibility. Was that a choice? I didn't hesitate. Yes. The work isn't about me. It's about the mission. He smiled. That sounds very military. It should, I replied. But it's also true. He chuckled, then looked at his notes. Some of your peers have built reputations in public, giving talks, writing books, appearing on panels. You don't really do that. Why? I thought for a second, then said, because I don't need applause to do my job well. Recognition isn't the goal. Readiness is. There was a pause, like he didn't expect that answer to be so clean. Do you think that mindset comes from being a woman in command? Partly, I said. But it's more about how I was raised. I wasn't the loud one in the family. I learned to listen, to observe, and when I speak, I mean it. He leaned in slightly. Anything you've learned the hard way? I nodded. That leadership isn't about being liked. It's about being respected. And sometimes, silence is more powerful than a speech. They paused the recording to adjust lighting. I checked my phone. One unread message from Savannah. Is NORAD the place from the Santa tracker thing? Or is that just PR? I didn't answer. The lights came back on. We're rolling again, the producer said. The interviewer glanced down. Do you ever feel misunderstood? I smiled. Only when people judge me by things that don't matter. Like what? Like what car I drive. Or whether I wear makeup. Or how often I post online. He raised his eyebrows. That actually happens? All the time, I said. But that's their problem. Not mine. The producer gave a thumbs up. That's a wrap. As they packed up the gear, the interviewer said, That was great. Honest. You're not like most officers we get in here. I'll take that as a compliment. Do you mind if I share a clip of this on LinkedIn? Go ahead, I said. Just tag it under quiet leadership. He laughed, and I shook his hand before heading out. It was nearly dusk when I got to the parking garage. I walked past a line of government-issued black SUVs with tinted windows and hopped into my dusty Corolla like it was a throne. It didn't need to shine. It just needed to move. As I pulled onto the road, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Savannah. You really don't care what people think, huh? I read it, then turned the screen face down on the passenger seat. No, I didn't care. Because while she was asking strangers if O5 was a high rank, I was briefing 4-star generals. While she was editing vlogs for clicks, I was clearing flight corridors for nuclear-capable bombers. While she chased likes, I built legacy quietly, firmly, and without needing anyone to clap. Back home, I made myself a sandwich, fed the dog, and opened my laptop to review mission readiness for the next week. Somewhere in the background, Savannah's latest video popped up on YouTube. I clicked out of it. The title was something about toxic family dynamics and setting boundaries. She wasn't talking about me yet, but her audience always read between the lines. I didn't need to watch it. I lived the unedited version. My life wasn't a performance. It was a post, and I held it with both hands. The clip from the party hit TikTok 4 days later. Not on Savannah's account. Someone else had uploaded it, probably a guest, or someone who screen recorded the live stream while she was mocking my car. The caption read, She laughed at her military sister's car, then saw the license plate. That was all it took. By lunchtime, the video had over 200,000 views. By dinner, it was climbing toward 1 million. The internet, as it often does, did its thing. People paused the video to zoom in on the license plate. They Googled the code. They screenshot the USAF 05 tag. Veterans chimed in. Military spouses, active duty officers. Even people who didn't know a single soldier were stitching the video with reactions ranging from disbelief to outright fury. Y'all really just mocked a lieutenant colonel live on camera? This woman serves our country and gets clowned for driving a Toyota? Respect doesn't come from leather seats, sweetheart. It comes from rank. Imagine being that loud and that wrong. Comment after comment piled up. Some posted side-by-side comparisons of influencer culture versus military sacrifice. Others dug deeper. Savannah's followers started asking questions she wasn't ready for. Is this your sister? Why didn't you mention she was in the Air Force? Did you really make fun of her car while she was serving the country? Her replies were awkward, defensive, or silent. She deleted some. Reposted others with captions like, Don't believe everything you see online. Or, Family's complicated. But the damage was done. A few veteran accounts with big platforms picked up the story. One former Marine wrote, We don't wear status on our sleeves, we wear it in silence. Shame on anyone who mocks service. And suddenly, Savannah's image, carefully curated, heavily filtered, and painfully self-managed, began to crack. Brands reached out privately and asked to pause pending collaborations. One unfollowed her publicly. Her weekly sponsored content slowed. Engagement dropped. She went from polished tutorials to emotional Instagram stories filmed from the front seat of her Audi, eyes slightly puffy, voice trembling just enough to feel performative. She called it a misunderstanding. She said people were misinterpreting the tone. She said I was a very private person, and that I wouldn't want the attention. She was right about one thing. I didn't want the attention. But I wasn't the one who brought the cameras. A week after the video blew up, I got a message request from a woman named Claire who ran a podcast called Daughters of Duty. She wanted to know if I'd be open to talking about what it was like being a female officer in a world that often overlooks you even within your own family. I didn't reply. Not because I was offended, but because the story didn't need more noise. It was already saying plenty on its own. Still, that didn't stop the ripple effect. People started tagging Savannah in military appreciation posts, clearly sarcastic. One video showed a female pilot stepping out of a fighter jet, overlaid with, "Drives a Corolla. Commands respect." Meanwhile, her sister's biggest battle is the algorithm. It was brutal, and I didn't lift a finger. I went to work, I ran ops, I briefed teams, I checked radar feeds, I responded to directives. And while I did all that, Savannah stayed busy trying to control a narrative that had long since outpaced her phone's editing software. Mom called one night to ask if I'd seen the videos. I told her I had. "She's upset," Mom said. "She says people are twisting it." I took a breath. Did she twist it? Or did she just finally say it out loud? She didn't mean it like that. Sure she did. She always has. There was silence on the line. "She's still your sister. And I'm still her sister," I said. One of us just stopped pretending that meant protection from consequences. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even bitter. I was just done covering for her. Because for years, Savannah had broadcast everything. Every latte, every outfit, every petty opinion about people who didn't play her game. And for once, the game turned around. And she didn't like it. A few days later, I heard from Captain Reyes. "Colonel," he said, "you're trending." I rolled my eyes. "God help us." He laughed. "Someone wrote a thread calling you the face of silent service. It's kind of badass. And Tom, please don't print that on a coffee mug." "Too late," he joked. "Already ordering 3. He handed me a folder and added, "For what it's worth, your silence made more noise than anything your sister ever posted." That line stuck with me. Not because I wanted it to, but because it was true. The first time Savannah tried to visit me on base, she didn't tell anyone in advance. Not Mom, not me, not even the gate guard she pulled up on in her rented BMW SUV. I was in a strategic planning meeting when I got the message. Sergeant Colton knocked once, stepped in, and handed me a slip of paper without saying a word. His expression was neutral, but I could tell by the slight tilt of his eyebrow that this wasn't a routine notification. On the note, civilian visitor attempting access, name, Savannah Hale, relationship, sister, says you're expecting her. I stared at the words for half a second, then stood. "I'll handle this. Like." The room fell silent as I exited. Lieutenant Mercer glanced up but didn't say anything. Everyone knew I didn't take interruptions lightly, especially personal ones. By the time I reached the front gate, Savannah was already mid-argument with a corporal in full gear. "Ma'am," he was repeating, "this is a restricted military installation. You can't just show up." "I'm not just anyone," she snapped. "I'm her sister. That doesn't change protocol. She won't care. I swear, she'll want to see me." I stepped forward. "I don't," I said. Savannah turned so fast she nearly dropped her phone. Of course she was filming, or pretending to. At this point, it was hard to tell where the lens stopped and her face began. "Morgan," she gasped. "Why didn't you answer my messages?" "Because you don't get to announce yourself like this." Her tone switched immediately. "I just wanted to talk. In person. You've been ignoring me." "I've been working." She opened her arms like that explained everything. "Fine. So talk now." The corporal shifted beside her, clearly unsure whether to intervene. I gave him a slight nod. "It's okay. I'll take it from here." He stepped back. Savannah smiled, too relieved to notice I didn't smile back. "I thought maybe if I came in person it'd be easier," she said. "There's been a lot of noise online. People are saying things, brands are pulling out. I just wanted to clear the air. Maybe do a photo or something show we're okay." I blinked slowly. "You came here for damage control." She flinched. "Number, I came here to make things right." I crossed my arms. "Right for who?" She hesitated. "I didn't. You don't get to walk onto my turf because the internet turned on you. This isn't your backdrop. It's my job. And you don't belong here." Her jaw tensed. "I'm just trying to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "I didn't break anything." And she opened her mouth again, probably to say something about forgiveness or sisterhood or our shared story, but I cut her off. This is a secure facility, I said. You don't get to show up for content. You don't get access. Not to the base. Not to me. I turned to the corporal. She's leaving. He nodded. Savannah's voice cracked. You're really doing this? You're shutting me out? I'm drawing a boundary, I said. Something you should have learned about before trying to monetize me. And Creighton. She looked like she wanted to cry, or rage, or throw something, maybe all three. But instead, she turned, yanked her sunglasses over her face, and marched back to her car. I waited until the guard confirmed she was off the premises before heading back inside. When I got to my office, there was a small envelope on my desk. Inside was a card from a junior officer I'd mentored last year. She'd just gotten her first command post. Her note was handwritten, simple. Thank you for showing me that leadership doesn't have to look loud. I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. Because in the span of one afternoon, Savannah had tried to walk into my world without invitation and got reminded that not every door is hers to open. Some doors require clearance. Some require character. She had neither. 3 days later, Savannah sent flowers. They arrived in a glossy white box with gold lettering and a folded card that read, in her handwriting, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Can we talk? The bouquet was tasteful. White orchids, eucalyptus sprigs, a hint of blush roses. Expensive, obviously. Delivered to base by a private courier who had no idea he was handing apology arrangements to a lieutenant colonel who could clear a no-fly zone faster than her sister could clear her inbox. I didn't take the flowers home. I left them on the table in the admin hallway. Someone thought they were from the Air Force Association and thanked me. I just nodded. That afternoon, Savannah tried again. This time, it was a voice memo. Her voice was softer than usual. No fake chipper energy, just raw edges. Hey, she said. I know I messed up. I didn't realize how much it mattered to you or how important your work really is. I get it now. I think. I hope. I'm sorry for all of it. She paused. I shouldn't have said what I said. I shouldn't have filmed it. I let my audience become more important than my own family, and I hate that it took public backlash for me to see it. Another pause. Longer. You didn't deserve that. You never did. There was no background music, no branding, no pitch. Just her voice. Finally human. But it was too late. Because apologies only land when they're not stapled to consequence, and hers came after the consequences had already done the talking. Still, I listened. And then I deleted it. That night, Mom called again. She'd been keeping her distance lately, probably trying not to pick sides. She says she's sorry, Mom told me. Really sorry. I know. She's trying. She's also filming again. Mom sighed. People can be both things. I know that too. The silence stretched. I don't want you two to stay like this forever, she said. I closed my eyes. Neither do I. She's scared. So was I, for years. I age. Mom didn't answer that. She didn't need to. That weekend, Savannah posted a new video. A short one. No makeup, no cuts. Just her, sitting on a park bench, holding a mug like it might anchor her. The title, When You're Wrong, Say So. She didn't mention me by name, but she talked about a family member who deserved better. She talked about chasing validation and losing sight of what matters. She said she was taking a break from sponsored content to reconnect with her values. The comments were mixed. Some praised her, some rolled their eyes, some asked if she'd apologized directly to me. She hadn't. She'd apologized to her camera, which was what she always did. The next day, I got a letter, handwritten, no envelope branding, no courier tracking. Just my name. And her handwriting, steadier this time. Inside, you didn't ask for revenge, and yet the world delivered it. You didn't need to shout. Your silence said everything. I hope one day you'll let me earn your trust again. Savannah. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I folded the letter once and put it in the drawer beside my service coin from Task Force Liberty. Both were proof of things earned through pressure. And both reminded me that silence isn't empty. It just waits to be understood. I didn't tell Savannah I'd be speaking at the Women in National Defense Summit. She found out the same way everyone else did through the press release. It wasn't a flashy event, not by influencer standards. No red carpet. No selfie walls. Just an auditorium full of women in uniform, policymakers, security analysts, and a handful of high school ROTC girls scribbling notes like their futures depended on it. They'd asked me months ago. It was part of an annual series on silent leadership and operational excellence. I almost turned it down. Public speaking wasn't my thing, but then I saw the attendee list. 100 junior officers, 20 foreign defense delegates, and a few women who'd never seen someone like them take command without having to shout for the mic. So I said yes. The lights were low when I stepped on stage. The moderator kept the intro brief, just my name, rank, and a 2-line bio. No fluff, just facts. I walked to the podium. No notes, no slides, just one message. When I was 24, I began. I was the only woman in a war room filled with older men. One of them looked at me and said, "Coffee runs that way, Lieutenant." I didn't say a word. I just walked to the board, briefed the intercept protocol, and 5 minutes later, that same man stood up and said, "I trust her. Let her lead." There was a soft murmur. A couple quiet nods. "I've learned that authority doesn't come from volume," I continued. "It comes from credibility, from doing the work, not just being seen doing it. And sometimes, it comes from knowing when to say nothing and letting your work speak for you." I paused. I don't need applause, I need results. I don't need to be trending, I need to be trusted. And I don't care if someone mocks my car, because when it matters, I'm the one clearing the airspace above their heads. The crowd didn't erupt, but they listened, and that meant more than noise. After the speech, a few cadets came up to shake my hand. One said she used to be afraid she wasn't loud enough to lead. Another said her dad was in the Navy and would be proud someone like me existed in the Air Force. As I was gathering my things backstage, I spotted a familiar silhouette near the auditorium exit. Savannah, wearing a blazer 2 sizes too big for her usual brand deals, no camera in hand, and for once no phone pointed toward her face. She didn't come up to me. She didn't wave. She just stood there, tucked behind a row of folding chairs, watching me from the edge like a person who'd finally realized the show wasn't hers. One of the organizers approached me with a signed copy of a new memoir by a retired female general. She thanked me for the speech and asked if I'd consider mentoring a few young officers through their next leadership program. I said yes. And when I glanced back at the door, Savannah was gone. But I didn't need her to say anything. She'd heard it. Not just the words, but the weight of them. And maybe, for the first time, she understood that real power doesn't flash. It holds steady. The next time I saw her, it was quiet. No cameras. No crowd. Just the two of us sitting across from each other in Mom's sunroom, legs tucked under mismatched cushions. The smell of overwatered ferns and lemon tea hanging between us like a truce neither of us knew how to hold. Savannah had called ahead. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Just said, "I'll be in town. Can we talk like grown-ups?" I told her to come by mid-afternoon. No performance, no agenda. Now, here she was. Hair tied back, face bare, sweater sleeves bunched around her thumbs. Not the Savannah from the live streams. Not the one who rolled her eyes at my car. Just my sister underneath it all, raw and brittle like an old photo that somehow never faded, just cracked in silence. She looked at me. I looked back. "Thanks for not slamming the door in my face," she said. "You're not that lucky," I replied. We both let out a short laugh, awkward, but not mean. There was a long pause after that. I didn't fill it, neither did she. Finally, she broke the silence. "You were right," she said. "I was awful. I said nothing. I made fun of you in front of everyone. I used to think it didn't matter because it was just online, just jokes. But it wasn't. It was disrespect." Still, I didn't speak. She wasn't finished. I thought success was being seen, being followed. I didn't realize it could look like someone who doesn't even try to be noticed. Now I nodded. Just once. "I didn't know what an O5 was," she added. "I had to Google it. Most civilians do." She shifted in her seat. "I didn't expect the internet to care," she admitted. "But when they turned on me, it hurt way more than I thought it would." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean when they held you accountable?" Her eyes dropped to her lap. "Yeah," she whispered. I didn't post that video, Savannah, you did. I know. And I didn't make it go viral. I know that too. There was a beat. I didn't do it for revenge, I added. I didn't do anything at all. I just showed up with the same car and the same name I've always had. She finally met my eyes again. I know, she said. That's the part that messed with me. You didn't even try. And still, everything flipped. I didn't want it to flip, I said. I just wanted to be respected. She nodded slowly. And for the first time in years, her expression didn't look defensive. It looked tired, like someone who'd finally stopped pretending they were okay. I miss us, she said. I didn't answer right away. I let that sentence sit in the room between us, filling the corners and cracks. I miss who we could have been, I finally said. Not who we were. She nodded again. I get that. End quote. Another pause. I started therapy, she said. Started talking about why I always feel like I have to be the loudest one in the room. I looked at her, surprised but not skeptical. Good, I said. That's a better place to be loud. She gave a small smile. Not the kind that aims for likes. The kind that says maybe, just maybe, something in her had finally shifted. I'm not asking for things to go back, she said. I know I don't deserve that. I just hope we can find something. Not new, but honest. I don't hate you, Savannah. I don't deserve that kindness. It's not kindness, I replied. It's truth. We sat there for a while longer, talking like people, not roles. No influencer, no officer, just sisters who'd taken a long, stupid detour back to something that almost looked like understanding. And maybe that was enough. Not for full trust. Not yet. But enough to start over without pretending the past didn't happen. 2 months after that conversation in the sunroom, a grant came across my desk from a small nonprofit focused on veteran transition support. They wanted help designing a mentorship program for female service members preparing to return to civilian life. Most of them had no family backing them, no LinkedIn presence, no plan beyond survival. I knew those women. I'd led them. I'd mentored them. I'd been them, in a way. So I called them back. I didn't ask for money. I offered structure. 3 weeks later, we formed the HAIL Project. It started with just a handful of mentors, active duty women with leadership experience, each assigned to one veteran at a time. We helped with resumes, mock interviews, networking scripts. Real, tangible help. No platitudes. No branded t-shirts. I didn't put my name on the website, but Savannah did. She asked first. She came to me with a typed proposal. No frills. She'd written it in plain font, no logos, no styling, just an idea, to offer media training and digital literacy workshops for those women who'd never had to sell themselves online, but would soon have to in the job market. I'm not here to fix my image, she told me. I'm not here to fix yours, I replied. We partnered anyway. She didn't speak at launch events. She didn't post about it in the beginning. She just showed up every Tuesday at 2 p.m. to sit beside a Marine named Kiera and help her build a portfolio for an aviation company. She brought coffee and asked smart questions and kept her phone in her bag. And when Kiera got the job, she didn't post a selfie. She just sent me a text that said, "She did it," I cried, in a good way. That was the only time Savannah cried that month. We never made it a big thing. No press release, no PR agency. Just quiet work, one woman at a time. Somewhere along the way, the HAIL Project picked up speed. Word spread. Other branches called. Retired officers offered to volunteer. A local news outlet did a piece titled, "Not All Heroes Wear Rank, Sisters Rebuild What Pride Almost Broke." I hated the title, but I understood why it worked. One afternoon, while we were prepping for a regional event, Savannah handed me a folder. Inside were donation records, hers. She had been matching every outside contribution anonymously since the program launched. "You don't have to do that," I told her. "I know," she said, "but I want to." She paused. "I spent 10 years building a brand on image. Maybe this is the first real thing I've helped build that doesn't need my face on it." I nodded. "Good." She looked at me then, not like a sister asking for approval, but like a woman standing on her own ground. "It's not redemption," she said. "I know that. But it feels like purpose." "Purpose doesn't ask for forgiveness," I said. "It just moves forward." Savannah smiled, soft and small, and then she got back to folding brochures. That's how it grew. Not with applause, but with women who'd been overlooked, stepping into rooms where they were finally prepared to be seen, not for what they wore or posted, but for what they knew and what they'd survived. And the funny thing was, I never thought I'd build something like this. I thought I'd stay in the shadows, doing my work until retirement. But maybe that's what revenge looks like when you heal. It stops being about proving someone wrong and starts being about helping others rise where you were once dismissed. No fireworks. Just follow through. The last time I saw Morgan pull out of our mother's driveway, it was the same car, still dusty, still humming like it had something to prove even when no one was watching. The Corolla hadn't changed, but something about the way people looked at it had. The neighbors didn't snicker anymore. They waved. Not because they knew the make or the model, but because they finally understood who was behind the wheel. It was a small moment, but it stuck with me. By then, the story had stopped trending. The comments had slowed. Most of Savannah's old followers had moved on to the next scandal, the next viral apology, the next outrage cycle. But offline, something lasting had taken root. Morgan didn't cash in on the attention. She didn't do a book deal or a speaking tour or even post a single word about what happened. She didn't need to, because the world had already spoken for her. She went back to base, back to drills and deadlines and diplomacy. Her inbox didn't care about clout. Her mission didn't hinge on public opinion. But the ripple she left behind stayed moving. The HAIL project grew into 3 states. More than 100 women had completed the mentorship program. Not all were military. Some were daughters of veterans. Some were just lost. But every single one had been given a shot at starting again quietly, effectively, with dignity. Savannah stayed involved. She didn't lead. She contributed. Her face slowly faded from sponsored content. Her voice got steadier. Her wardrobe, less performative. She still filmed, sometimes, but mostly things that didn't include her. She found stories worth telling that weren't just about her redemption arc. She never called it rebranding. She just called it showing up differently. The last note I got from her wasn't on Instagram or in a DM. It was a postcard from a small town in Montana where she was helping organize a workshop for women who'd just left the Guard. On the back, it said, "The only thing louder than your silence was how much it taught me. Love, S." Morgan never showed that postcard to anyone. She kept it in her desk, tucked inside a plain folder marked personal. Some days, she'd pull it out and read it once before heading into mission briefings. Not to relive the drama, but to remember how far things had come. And on those days, when she walked across the lot toward that same old Corolla, she didn't think about the party, or the live stream, or the laughter. She thought about the fact that she didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. She just needed to keep showing up with discipline, with principle, and with zero interest in being understood by people who never cared to ask in the first place. Because some of the loudest victories don't look like revenge. They just look like someone leaving in the same car, with a whole new kind of respect following close behind. And maybe that's what true power looks like when you no longer need to prove anything, not even to the people who once laughed the loudest. Morgan didn't need the spotlight to win. She just needed to live with purpose, lead with quiet strength, and let the world catch up on its own. Because in the end, the loudest revenge isn't rage or ruin. It's dignity. Unshaken, unbothered, unmistakable.